Well, I have with me today David Simoes-Brown, who is one of the founders and the strategy partner in a company called 100% Open. David, thank you very much for talking with us.
You're welcome, John.
I wonder if you could tell us a bit about where the company came from and where you see this very interesting open innovation space.
I certainly can. We've been going about 2.5 years now, and we're in fact a spin-out of an organisation called NESTA, the National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts. And I had possibly the best job in the public sector for 3 years there, where we were tasked with creating new ways for the UK to innovate. So we alighted on open innovation and the early work that was going on with Procter & Gamble and Professor Chesborough and all those sorts of things. I thought, well, that could be an interesting model for the UK. So we had a set of programs over a 3-year period which kind of experimented with different models, different ways of doing it. And being part of the public sector and funded, we were able to then pilot those models in real time with real businesses. So it was a wonderful opportunity. So much so that when our job was over at NESTA, there was sort of nothing left for us to do apart from spin out and do it for money as well as love. So that's how 100% Open was founded. The space, it's interesting. I've often thought that working in open innovation is a bit like being a Wild West settler in the 18th century in America. It's like the Wild West out here, and there are very few established methodologies. There are very few, there's very little legal expertise when you need it. There are very few kind of companies that are culturally adept to really opening up. And that's not just from the point of view of big companies. Small companies, SMEs, and the general public have yet to really understand fully what open innovation is all about. So it's a very exciting field. In fact, the first time in my life that I'm at the beginning of something interesting rather than the end of something dull. So one of my messages would be, this industry is a highly creative phase. So there's a thing called crowdsourcing, which people are getting very excited about. It's led to a lot of mutual opportunity exploration between big companies as well. So once you start opening up your thought process and realising that not all the smart people work for us, you can look in various places for other smart people to collaborate with. And it's just started, really. I mean, that's.
And could you give us a couple of examples of the kind of thing you mean?
Okay, I'm increasingly thinking of open innovation at 4 levels. So we'll go from traditional to new. Okay. Traditional open innovation is between the Davids and the Goliaths of this world. So you have Procter & Gamble. So our very first project was with P&G, and we helped them publicly issue a couple of interesting briefs to the UK design industry. And the UK design industry or SMEs submitted technologies or ideas for a prize and a bit of funding. So that's the kind of classic David and Goliath. So that's with SMEs. Another project we did was with McLaren, their Formula One team. McLaren have a division called MAT, McLaren Applied Technologies, and one of their things that they like to do is realise value from the amazing innovation furnace that is Formula One. So we managed to broker a partnership between them and NATS, the National Air Traffic Service, to repurpose some racing software for airport control. So that's the other level. So classic David and Goliath. Then we've got what we call peer-to-peer open innovation, and that can lead to all sorts of interesting strategic opportunities and partnerships and all that. And the third level, which is probably the most emergent level, is what we call customer co-creation. So it's increasingly apparent that big companies have an amazing untapped resource in their existing customers. So, for example, this is our third project with E.ON now, the power company. And come next month, they sponsored a Channel 4 TV program called Future Family, and it's all about how a family will use the latest gadgets and gizmos and electrical stuff.
Okay.
And at the end of that program, they get a link to our co-creation website, so we're engaging pretty much the whole of the UK. We're expecting something like 50,000 people on this site.
Wow.
And they will be engaged and excited, I hope, by the program content, and then ask for their innovations and their builds on the things they've seen on the website. So we started that whole process in prototype with E.ON's actual customers. So this is broadcast, but we started narrowcast with their customers. So we used a research panel, a pre-existing research panel, filtered those for creativity and entrepreneurialism, which isn't that difficult, and then engaged with these normal electricity consumers who just, sat there and consumed electricity from the business's point of view, but looked at them as rounded, interesting entrepreneurial individuals. And if you take any 100 electricity consumers, you'll have 2 or 3 real bright sparks, pun intended, who will be able to sell you stuff and sell you services perhaps, or come up with a new metering technology, and that's what happens. So there's a sort of refocusing, I think, in terms of the relationships between big companies and their customers, from me sell, you buy, to me sell, me buy, if you like. That I think is the leading edge, and the reason it's the leading edge is that you killed at least 2 birds with one stone. The first bird is innovation. The second one is a sense of customer engagement.
Yes.
So what we found with our first project with E.ON, called Power to the People, last year in 2010, was that we were getting a lot of sort of warmth, I guess, from the website. So we set up a website, asked some interesting questions, and had hundreds of interesting ideas back. But because these are a little like social media spaces, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of chat, a lot of kind of meeting and bonding, and it's always great if the client, the company is obviously there and listening. And therefore, new relationships form. People's idea of E.ON as a big faceless corporation, if they have that idea, is rapidly dispelled. And their net promoter score starts increasing.
Interesting.
And they start recommending E.ON to their friends, and the whole saliency of that brand and that relationship goes sky high. So this year, our client is half innovation and half marketing. So actually what's happening is we're turning a customer co-creation piece. Yes, we're farming lots of great ideas for their innovation pipeline, but we're also creating new, warmer relationships with customers and potential customers. And the third unexpected and emergent area is internal co-creation. All of our clients have now, bar one, asked us for an internal ideation platform where they can use a kind of social media approach of putting comments, asking questions, getting answers, ranking, voting, building. Have asked us for that to help unite functions and divisions and silos within businesses. So the craft skills of external open innovation are rapidly being internalised for uniting and rewiring the brains of massive corporations globally. So that's actually very exciting. There's an example which has been going for 5 years now at Orange, or France Telecom, and they have a system called Idee Click. Idea, click, you have an idea. And it's brilliant. It saved or made them almost €1 billion over the 5 years. It has 30,000 employees that are almost daily engaged, so it's a third of the workforce. And it's evolved into an amazing system where it's not just I have an idea and I'll upload it. It's evolved into the entire project management system. So the idea, if it's any good, gets farmed out to the relevant technical or customer specialist. It then gets taken forward into prototype, and execute it. So it's actually,
so it's an innovation system, not just an idea.
Entire innovation system, and it's become a peer-to-peer. It's a peer-to-peer support mechanism as well. So, say telephone operator X says, I've got an issue with these clients, I can't understand. There was an issue with someone who didn't, with a lot of English customers, and it's France, remember, and she couldn't understand, her English wasn't good enough, so she suggested, why don't we have some English speakers in the call centre, and yes, they did that, and then they trained them on English and all that. So there's lots of kind of but it was colleagues that responded to her initially. Yeah. So there's a sort of, how can you help me? So it's turned from idée clic to j'ai un quai, which any French people out there will realise is a pun. G1K, j'ai un quai, but j'ai un quai means I have a case or I have a problem, can you help me? So they call it j'ai un quai. So what they've done is they've turned an internal ideation platform where people just submit, what used to be called suggestions box. Yes. But they've turned it into an integrated, budgeted, controlled system for amazing internally generated innovation. So it's funny, I started talking about open innovation. You would imagine one could describe that as closed innovation, but at least it's internal. But it relies on a lot of the same skill sets.
Absolutely.
Collaboration.
And in large organisations, they're as diffuse as a population. So in that sense, bringing them together wouldn't normally happen in one site.
Absolutely.
David, it's fascinating in terms of the emergent opportunities and also this moving frontier. It can't be without its problems. I wonder if you could comment a bit on some of the challenges you see.
I can. I've got two obvious ones and two surprising ones, I think, for you. Well, they might be surprising. And the obvious one you'll expect me to trot out is intellectual property. So do we have the IP regimes? Do we have the business models? Do we have the kind of, lawyers that are nice enough in companies that will allow very unequal partners to create mutual value? No, in most cases. So there's a new skill set required, a new skill set of creative business model making, allied with, not a flexible approach to the law, because that would be wrong, but it's slightly more creative. What would be the equivalent of creative accounting? Creative lawyering. I don't know what it is, but at least so, and that's from both sides. SMEs need to get much smarter about what they own, what they can own, and what the deal is. However, broadly speaking, I would have said that open innovation teaches us one thing. It teaches us that it's not about ownership. It's about delivery, execution. So, who cares who owns it, as long as we both make money out of it? And an approach like that, then a lot of the legal issues kind of go away, because you're not arm wrestling over something little, over a mere title deed. You're actually having a constructive commercial conversation about who's going to profit from this thing and how. So that's the first thing, IP. The second obvious thing is access. So it's, from the corporation's point of view, very inefficient to have a whole bunch of scouts and a whole bunch of people in different territories and different markets, and have relationships with 15 different universities around the globe. It takes a lot of time, and it's very inefficient. It is almost literally hunting for a needle in a haystack to try and find a technology or company you can do business with. And from the point of view of a small business, most of the big doors you find yourself approaching are closed or unmarked or slammed in your face. So how do you find the right door, and how do you open it, and how do you get it to stay open? So all those are problems of access, and some of that is ameliorated by intermediaries such as Innocentive, who have created a little mini marketplace so people can kind of understand what's there and go there. But that is all very nascent, that whole thing. So there will be, I predict this because we're going to do it, there will be there will be networks that are created that are bespoke to different companies. The two themes that are less obvious are culture and process. So what we're finding is, a company will have a culture that's adept at opening up, or in some way predisposed to opening up, it doesn't have the right processes, and a company often will invent a new process for opening up and then find that it doesn't work because they lack the right cultural characteristics. So I think there's a kind of collaboration. So talking about culture first, I think there's a kind of collaboration intelligence quotient that you need, and there are certain collaboration skills that we're teaching, if you like, that involve personal attributes and also company attributes. So culture, if you define culture as what we do around here, then if you don't do open innovation, then it's obvious that you're not going to be culturally adept at doing it around here. So what happens first? Okay, first somebody gets given the job of open innovation director, or maybe someone from R&D decides to put a brief out, or maybe something else happens. And all goes terribly well until they put the brief out. Then one of two or three things happens. They get a call from the marketing team, or the PR team, or their boss's boss, because suddenly this thing has got external visibility. And the lesson from that is gain alignment through talking to colleagues in the expected and the unexpected areas. So our first project with Orange, which is called Oscar, our client there, Jogesh Limbani, who's now head of open innovation at Orange UK, is one of life's connectors. So the core skill you need to make open innovation work in a business isn't technical, really, isn't legal. It is all about communicating effectively with colleagues across the business. So Jogesh assembled the right team at Orange that meant that we wouldn't hit any hurdles later. So all the right people were brought in and had an input into the process, and all the right people were kind of informed. So that included M&A, mergers and acquisitions people, that included UK marketing, it included R&D, it included people from France who had rights of veto. So he created a team which meant that they could be receptive to external innovations. And the result of that project was it's now a trial of a service called Last Second Tickets, which is a mobile phone enabled system which enables you to go and see gigs at the last minute in an area near you. So it's a perfect fit for Orange.
Absolutely.
But that required technical skills to adapt it to their system. It required kind of legal and business modelling skills to know how the deal was going to pan out. It included marketing skills to know which segment this would target best at and how that would promote loyalty or whatever. And it required R&D skills for technical due diligence and all that sort of thing. So open innovation is great until you start, and then it gets complicated. Yeah. So culturally, the thing. Personally, you need to be a connector, and then your culture needs to accept those connections. Yeah. So with this Orange team I mentioned, it was the first time they'd ever been in a room together, these guys. So, and that, once it worked very well. So that's sort of culture. So the second aspect of culture is skills and personnel. So increasingly we find that we're dealing with HR people as well as marketing people as well as innovation people, because the skills required to implement open innovation across the business are different, and you might want to hire different people. You certainly want to train them differently, and you will probably want to motivate them differently as well. So one of the things that occurs at some point in that cultural journey is, can we spin out? Or do you have a venturing arm that we could profit from? Yeah. Or don't fire me, give me some your IP and technology, and I'll bring some value back. So there are also some creative ways of creating a different contract between employer and employee open innovation.
So it's much more entrepreneurial. Yeah.
Yes, it can. As soon as you let the outside in, all sorts of interesting things happen like that, I think, or will. So there's a kind of motivational piece, but there's also the skill sets. So are people good negotiators? Are they good communicators? Are they good Do they have listening skills? You know, how many people in business are great at listening? Fewer than you might imagine.
Yes.
And so on and so forth. So there's a whole cultural piece, which is interesting. In fact, our last contract, I can't say who it is for, but it was essentially a cultural transformation piece. In fact, no, I can tell you this. David Richard, the guy at Orange, France, who runs ID Click, he says something like, it's a cultural transformation program masquerading as an innovation engine. So his whole approach to that is it's about uniting a company, getting it talking, getting it helping each other, getting it to sort of relate in a much more meaningful, positive way. So yeah, open innovation will often transform culture without kind of meaning to.
That's a fairly big one, yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely. And the second unexpected one is process. And it's unexpected because at the beginning of this I said open innovation is like the Wild West. We're kind of making it up in many respects as we go along, you know, creatively and carefully. So if it is like that, how can we have processes? Well, I think people will need to understand the scope of open innovation. So, and to a certain extent, the flavours of open innovation too. Because if your image of open innovation is simply, you know, small company knocks on big company's door, does a deal, then there's no need for process. But I've outlined 4 different levels, all the way from external to internal. The different cultural attributes you need, and the types of things you innovate as well are very varied. So they can be product, they can be service, they can be product with a service wrap, they can be, you can give birth to new companies, new legal entities, new brands, you know, anything from a half-formed concept to a fully functioning and a market-tested prototype. So the stuff of open innovation is very varied and very very diverse. So you need some processes to get your head around it, and we try and make it simple, perhaps over simple, by saying that there are 2 flavours of open innovation. There's a kind of qualitative flavour, which we call jam, and that is, as the name might suggest, fairly intimate, quite creative, pretty much workshop based, works best between people of equal stature, companies of equal size, and tends to result in external routes to market. So joint ventures, things we do out there together. That's the jam. And then discover is more quantitative. It's more to do with the crowdsourcing end of things. So it's where you put a brief out to a very large number of people or companies, and then it's more competitive. So you will select winners from that process. So jam is more collaborative. Discover is more competitive. And that competition results in a winner, and then the deal is done as a result of that. Discovers tend to result in internal routes to market, so it's about us acquiring a technology from the outside, or a bunch of people from the outside, and then plugging it into our processes. So it's helpful, I think, to think of the spectrum from qualitative, collaborative, jam to quantitative, competitive, discover, and of course there's stuff in the middle as well. So that's, in terms of tools, that's the landscape. So we have 2 main tools. But there are some specific things that address the issues I was talking about earlier. So in terms of intellectual property, there's a tool we use called Airlock, which is where there's a confidential bubble around the submitter of the intellectual property, such that they can't then communicate directly with the big company, which obviates all sorts of issues.
Yes.
So the big company wants some IP, but it can't. A lot of them don't have confidential conversations, so there's a blocker there. So there are certain techniques like that can get you out of that particular sort of bind. And then we act as trusted agents on behalf of the SME, and we act in loco parentis for the big company. So we know what they want. We make sure we know what they want, and we make sure they get it. But they don't have to see it first. So there are devices like Airlock that help. And there are other tools that we're developing really on a case-by-case basis, such as internal ideation platforms for different people. So the last unexpected area is processes. People will try and sell you processes for open innovation, but I'd be a bit suspicious of that because if people aren't at least half making it up, then they're not doing a decent job in such an emergent marketplace. I would say.
David, that's absolutely fascinating, and in a sense it's not reinventing innovation, but it's certainly translating it into a 21st century network version.
Absolutely.
Very, very interesting. I wonder, perhaps just one last comment, if we could ask you. If you were giving some advice, based on your considerable experience, if you're giving some advice to somebody who's just been given the job of innovation manager, and perhaps is beginning to look at the Open Innovation Challenge, what advice might you give them?
Well, I think in line with my comments earlier about our friend Jogesh at Orange, is that the key skill is to connect with colleagues. So think about open innovation from every department's point of view. So if you're running a factory and you are thinking about supply chain, for example, what help can you be to the manager of that supply chain? How can you say, okay, let's put your processes out to tender, let's invite some new technologists in, and listen to people across the business, finding what pain points they have and inventing some ointment to rub on those pain points. So, and I've seen this happen last year across a whole bunch of different companies. So so open innovation isn't just about kind of front-end ideation. It can be fundamental to how the business transforms itself. So look at supply chain, look at marketing. Marketing are your friends in open innovation, or they soon will be when it gets out there. And that includes public relations and digital marketing and social media and all that kind of stuff, all integrated. Be very friendly with your intellectual property people, your lawyers. Get as senior sponsorship as you possibly can, because if you suddenly wander into a company and say, well, you need a new business model, then you'll be talking to the top guy fairly soon. So why not start with the top guy? So I think the attribute you need is to be a connector and really act yourself into a new way of thinking. By that I mean, as an open innovator, you'll be living open innovation. So you'll be collecting ideas like a magpie from across the business. You'll be finding value in unexpected corners. You'll be recombining technologies and ideas and people, and you'll be a living embodiment of the open innovation methodology in many ways. In order to do that, you have to have friends in all the right places across the business. That would be my advice.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, David. If people want to find out more, of course, they can look at your website, and there's a lot more information about 100% Open.
There is, yes. 100open.com, lots of case studies, blog's pretty good, even though it says it myself. And a lot of this stuff you'll find on the blog in a slightly more ordered fashion.
Wonderful. David, thank you very much for talking to us.
You're welcome, John.
Thank you.